We are live.
Oh, fantastic. We're live. Well, welcome to the first Digital Digest, which hopefully going forward will be every other Friday. And it's run by me. My name's Sam Bailey, and I run a company called Silver Compass Digital. And we specialise in helping small businesses to be successful using social media to increase their sales and to grow their businesses. And I'm very lucky to be joined by my friend Kathy Ennis today.
Hello,
Um,
Sam.
Hi, Kathy. Perhaps you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks very much. My name's Kathy Ernest, and I am described as the small business builder. I work with smaller businesses to help them become more profitable, basically. And although I work through most of the business processes that successful, profitable businesses need to undertake, my specialism is around brand and engagement marketing.
That's brilliant, and really that's what we're both going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
Um, we are going to be talking about how social media specifically can be used by small businesses as a really cost-effective way of growing their brand, uh, why it's an important thing to be doing right now, sort of in this economic climate and in the sort of increasingly digital world that we live in. And also we're going to talk about some of the great tools that are out there to help you do that as well. So I suppose we should sort of start off with one of the really basic questions. Um, and I think, Kathy, if you could answer why it's important for small businesses to have a brand, and also what a brand actually is.
Yeah, I'm going to turn that around and start with the second half of the question, which is what a brand is, because I think this is where a lot of smaller businesses get confused. We are in an age where brand is a word that is becoming more widely used, but not necessarily more widely understood. And many small businesses will actually go to a graphic designer, or some of them will go to clip art and design a logo and talk about their brand. But brand is actually more complex than that, and the design element is actually the final part of the process, because when you're actually thinking about brand, it's not the physical or visual representation of the business. The brand is the message and the values that actually sit within the business itself. So you may have a business that it has got a value that is exclusivity, or you may have one that is to do with fun, or a, a business may be to do with you know, cost effectiveness, or whatever it is that the business builder, the person that is starting the business, whatever it is that they see as being the core underlying values of that business. Interestingly, those underlying values of the business should be the underlying values of the business owner as well. So generally, when I'm working with somebody on creating a brand, that's where we start. We start with, well, who are you? What do you believe? What do you want this business to showcase about you, your products, your services? Once we get to the point where we understand the key message sitting underneath the business, what you can then start to do is to unpick that to determine the visual elements within that brand. So various words will be associated with, say, a different color palette. So words like trust and honesty, you might be looking at colours such as the navy blue range of blues.
Yes.
Colours like, yeah, fun and excitement, you might be looking at orange or yellows and those sorts of things. It will also determine things like your font type, and the shapes that you might use in your business. So something that's uh, fun and upbeat, you probably wouldn't have, loads of squares and straight lines. It might be a little bit more soft and fluid.
Mm.
Once you've done that bit of work, so you know what your values are, you know what your key message to your customers is, you know the colour palette that you're sitting within, you know the shapes and the fonts, then you can go along to a designer and say, this is my business, this is what it's about, this is how I see it sitting, design me something that looks like this and is a representation of my business. So that, sorry, not even cutting a long story short, but making a long story long, that's really what you're looking at in terms of brand.
But it is actually quite important that we fully explore that, because in a lot of ways, and I know myself as well, before actually embarking on this journey of setting up my own business, I was vaguely aware of the concept of a brand, but didn't sort of actually know sort of like the nitty gritty of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite interesting, sort of just understanding that brand is so much more than just a color palette or just a way in which you design, or even just sort of the fonts that you pick for your website. It is actually a manifestation of you as a personality. And
what it does, and the first half of the question is, why is it important to small businesses? And one of the things I say on my website is the fact that brands are not just for the big boys, because we look at companies like Coca-Cola and say Innocent Smoothies, or some of the big companies that are out there, where as soon as you see even a part of their logo, you recognise what the company is. That wasn't always the case. When those companies were first founded, they had to go through a process like that in order to create something that we now recognise. And the point of the recognition is that it's the visual communication element of it. When somebody sees that that element that's part of your business, it evokes a set of feelings, responses within the viewer. And that's what you're after. And that's sometimes where people get it wrong, because if they haven't done that pre-work, if they haven't worked out what it is that they want the visual element to communicate around the values and the values of the organisation and of the individual, they could be sending wrong messages. And that can only have a detrimental effect on your business, not a positive one. And what you want is that eventually the visual becomes embedded within the business itself. Classically, I always think about Nike in this sense. That the swoosh that is the Nike swoosh, we all recognise it now, and we would recognise, and we often do, not the Nike brand without the word Nike written underneath it, because it's become embedded in our consciousness. And the other part that's in there is that when we see it, we feel things to do with fitness and activity and fun and, come on, let's just get up and do it. That's the thing that they've embedded within us.
That's quite important as well, because when you were talking about the Nike swoosh, my actual initial thought went to the words "just do it" rather than the word Nike.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important distinction to make, on account of the fact that their visual branding has ingrained itself to a point where we are thinking about the values that they have as a brand, which is the "Just Do It" slogan, rather than their name.
Yeah. And the "Just Do It" has actually become part of the brand, in the same way as other companies. Every little helps. we know that's Tesco. It becomes part of it. And I don't know anything about cars at all, except that I hope that every time I get in mine and I put the key in, that it goes. But I always think, when you think about a brand such as Rolls-Royce or Bentley, there's a different feeling that you get from that. So whenever I think of Bentley, I always think of words like smooth, luxury. I can almost feel and smell the leather that would be inside the car. Whereas if I think of another car brand such as Hyundai or Kia, I'll think about things like economical and nippy and, for me, easy to park. And that's key to what brand is about. It's what, when people start to recognize it, it's what they feel about the company and their response to it. And that's the essence of brand. And as smaller businesses, that's what we're aiming towards, which is why when you do get to the point that you've had something created, that you use it consistently everywhere, because that then becomes a recognized part of delivery.
So I think that brings us on quite nicely to the next point that we wanted to talk about, which is getting your brand seen.
Yeah.
And more so than ever, social media is becoming a really important tool for getting seen and for building a brand, especially for small businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, so why do you think that is, Kathy?
Well, in terms of social media, I think that the growth of social media over the past 10 years has been phenomenal, and it's changed completely the way people view messaging about business. And I think that one of the things that smaller businesses have is an absolute advantage over the bigger businesses in terms of the use of social media, is the fact that they are much more in tune. Well, they're actually closer to their customer base.
Yeah.
I mean, if we go to one of the big brand Facebook pages, for example, we know that they've got a team of social media people working in their marketing department who are perhaps monitoring that Facebook page and replying on their behalf and doing all those kind of things. And we'll benefit from that. But if we go onto the Facebook page, or your Facebook page, for example, and post up a question about something, I know that you're going to answer it, you, the business owner, the person who's right at the heart of that business. So our proximity is it's really, really close. But you could be in outer Mongolia and we'd still have that closeness. You'd still be connected to me much more closely in that way. So I think that's a massive advantage of social media. Obviously, one part of it is that it's either, at point of use it's free. I don't think it's free to use because we always have to equate our time.
Yes.
And sometimes with some of the platforms, it's worthwhile paying for the premium services because you do get more options and it can save you a bit more time that way. But generally, it's really, really cost effective. The reach is phenomenal. You can reach people in parts of the world that you will never have dreamt of getting in contact with.
Absolutely.
I think the main element, though, in terms of brand that you have to remember is consistency. So it's about making sure that every one of your platforms carries your brand in the correct way, so that the use of colour is consistent, the use of font is consistent, the use of imagery is consistent, and the underlying part of that as well is that everything that goes out from your social media voice is in tune and aligned to your company and personal values. This is one of the biggest mistakes that that smaller businesses make, in as much as they sometimes forget that once something is out there, it's out there for good,
Yeah.
and that you can bring down your reputation far faster than you can build it up. My rule of thumb in terms of anything that you post out in any platform, if you wouldn't say it in front of your grandmother, or you wouldn't say it in front of somebody that you hold in esteem,
Yes.
it does not get posted, because put a bit of thought process into here first, because you can actually create far more damage very, very quickly than you could in any other way. So that's the sort of downside of it.
No, you're right. There are sort of three things that I just want to pick up on
Yeah.
what you've just said.
Yeah.
That is a great rule of thumb, and it's one I've heard in variations from a number of people. It's almost sort of like the strict mum or the strict grandma rule.
Yeah.
That if it's not something that you're comfortable to say in front of a strict, just steer clear of it. The best tone of voice to write on social media is to talk to one of the people that you'd sort of equate as being a good customer that you know well. So you'd talk to them in a respectful manner. You'd be familiar with them, but obviously there's still that professionalism that you have, because there is still that a business customer relationship going on there. The other point I wanted to bring up was the one of cost, which quite rightly said, all of these platforms are free at the point of use. There are levels within them that you can pay for. For example, Facebook and Twitter ads.
Yeah.
But if we compare them with sort of the old style of advertising, so for small businesses in particular, sort of using a local paper is a very popular way to go. But if you sort of equate it, you'd be spending a lot more money with the local paper and get less results, because it is a spray and pray approach. You're going to hit a lot of people, but you're not going to hit specifically people who care about your message.
Yeah.
With the social media advertising, you are able to really par down who you want to connect with, who you want to understand your message and sort of hear what you say. And because it's a smaller target audience, and you're being very specific about it, you'll get a better return, and it's going to cost you less money.
I think that's really true, and I mean, I think one of the interesting things there is let's take Facebook as an example. People become obsessed about the number of likes they actually have on their Facebook page. And one just little aside I will throw in here is, if there are any small businesses out there using their personal profile for business purposes, I would recommend that you stop doing it straight away, because it's not the appropriate place. And actually, I believe that Facebook's terms and conditions stipulate that you cannot use your profile for business purposes. But somebody actually using Facebook, and they might look and say, oh, I've only got 50 likes, or I've only got 200 likes, and that company over there's got 5,000 or 7,000 likes. Well, I think the average number of likes on Facebook pages is somewhere in the region of about 190, something like that. The fact is, if you've got 10 likes on a Facebook page, and those people are engaging with you and conversing with you and contributing, that is far more useful and effective as a business tool than having 5,000 likes where nobody comments on anything and nobody is engaged. So it's not all about numbers, it's not quantity, there is a quality element in there as well.
No, it's absolutely true. And I mean, I've got my own business Facebook page now, which is roughly in the numbers that you were talking about, Kathy.
Me too.
And I've run a big corporate page as well before, which had sort of a region of 5,000, 6,000 likes. I actually get a better return using Facebook with my business page, which has got 100 or so likes on it.
And it's because you know your people, this is what I was saying before, and coming back to what you were saying about the voice with which you speak to people. It's the classic thing, even if you're putting written copy together for a leaflet or a brochure, is that when you write it to one of your clients, because it personalizes it in that way, and it talks to them, and it's exactly the same here with social media, is that you're talking to the people that you work with or that you want to do business with, because it makes them feel part of the only way I can describe it, part of the family. There is that connection.
So whilst we're sort of on the topic of cost and sort of effectiveness and downfalls, and there are a lot of great free and I wouldn't say cheap, but affordable tools that are out for small businesses to use when it comes to promoting themselves online through social media. So have you got any? I know I've got tons of favourites that I use, but are there any in particular that stand out for you, Kathy?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a huge fan of Hootsuite as a management tool.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems that smaller businesses, and often the definition of small business is businesses up to 250 employees. I mean, the businesses that I work with tend to fall within what we call the micro end of that. So we're looking at 1 to 10 people, and in that circumstance, a lot of them, it's one person. And when you are an individual having to deliver your products and services and be every element in the business, you want to save yourself time. So for me, Hootsuite is a platform that allows you to do that, because you can manage your various social media profiles from one space. And the beauty of it, I think, is the scheduler. Because personally, for example, this week I've spent, of the 5 days this week, I've spent 3 days in a training room from 9 till 6. So the ability for me to actually be in communication with my customers is limited. So if I can actually schedule stuff to go out while I'm working, then it means that I can do my response after I finished being in that captive environment. So you can manage it really, really well from Hootsuite, and that's a free platform for you. But actually, I've experimented with their paid-for version as well, which I think was $5 a month. I mean, it was minuscule.
Yes.
And you get greater statistical analysis as part of that, because one of the things we need to say is that you do need to keep an eye on how effective things are. But you can also use it to, if you wanted to do some really effective scheduling, you can upload a spreadsheet with your elements in, so that it gets taken care of that way. So it's time saving in that sense. So I do like Hootsuite.
Yeah. And I'm going to talk about one of my other favourite free tools out there, which is slightly different from scheduling.
Yeah.
But will also really help you to sort of have a branded presence online. I want to talk about PicMonkey.
Oh, I love PicMonkey.
Yeah. And as soon as you know about it, you get that response. because it's basically free, really easy to use photo editing software or image editing software that you all do within a browser, and you can resize stuff, you can crop stuff down, you can sort of change the feel and the tone of things, you can overlay text onto it, and I've been using it for about 2 years now. I've never had to use the paid version of it, and it's just phenomenal because you can make really great professional looking cover photos for your Facebook page. I've used it to sort of create the image icons for all of the apps on my Facebook page, and sort of on my Pinterest boards and everything like that. So and I actually use it every day because the blogs that I write about social media and about digital marketing all have sort of a cover photo, which I get from various sort of stock image places, or it's just a picture I've taken. But I have to just sort of crop it down and put a little bit of overlay text on it, just to make sure that it's all within branding that I've set up on my website.
Yeah.
So for the amount of value that you get out of a product and pay absolutely nothing for, PicMonkey is just way up there for me.
Yeah, I use it. I use it a lot. The other one that I've been looking at over the last few weeks is similar but slightly different, and that's called Canva, Canva. And the reason that popped up was that I was looking at renewing all of the banner images on all of my social media platforms.
Yeah.
Because if you change one, you have to change them all because they all have to be consistent. And the reason I like Canva is it's got lots and lots of preset design elements that you can use, but it's also got all of the specifically sized spaces for actually creating your Facebook header, your Twitter header, all of those kinds of things. So it's just a question of dropping images into it, and you know that it's going to be perfectly sized for whatever you upload. So that I'm finding very useful as well.
Yeah.
The other thing I find is that with small businesses is the time element, is that they can sometimes worry about the amount of time it's going to take to manage it, but also the amount of time it's going to take to create content. And a couple of things that I think are very useful in that case is something like Buffer, which you can use free, again, to that will randomly post out things on your behalf through a day. But also, because it knows what you're posting about, it's very intuitive. The algorithms are obviously great. It comes up with loads of suggestions of other people's content that you can share through your platforms, which is really useful. And similar to that is the Pulse option on LinkedIn, and so you can use those suggested pieces of information to post out to your followers too, because remember, this is as much about not just your original content, but you showcasing your expertise and your knowledge of your business area. So if you're sharing, if you're looking at things that other people are creating and you're thinking, this is really useful, then you share. I quite often say to people that one of the things you need to have in the back of your mind when you are on social media is the concept of, I saw this and I thought of you. So yeah. It's that sharing that information that you found interesting, and as a consequence your clients are likely to find interesting too.
It's sort of that 80-20 rule, which many people might well be familiar with. If you're not the concept of it is that 80% of the time you should be talking about other things other than yourself, which really just sort of builds up your expertise and your credibility as a business in your specific area. And 20% of the time, it's things talking about you, talking about stuff that your business is doing, and having calls to action around your business. So I mean, just think about that as you post once a day on your Facebook page on weekdays. So 4 of those posts are going to be about stuff other than you. And one of those posts is going to be a call to action. So like a sign up for my newsletter. We're doing this webinar, sign up here, sort of thing. So we're running a little bit out of time. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes left.
Okay.
But I was hoping, Kathy, that you'd be able to sort of give us your best tip for a small business about to set up their brand, and then I'll give my best tip about a small business about to use social media for the first time. So if you,
I would say that if you're setting up, startup is always a costly process. That I wouldn't rush into anything around getting a visual identity very specific right at the beginning, because I think it's good to test the water for a little while, and I think it's good to keep things as plain and simple as possible. One thing I would recommend, that a lot of small businesses when they're starting will go to a company like Vistaprint to get their business cards. This is quite classic, and what they will do is they will choose an image from the Vistaprint library to represent them. And I'm not kidding, I was at a networking event some time ago, and I met 2 people. One was a florist and one was a funeral director. We put them together, but they actually had the same image on their business cards. So my advice in that case would be you go for a plain white card with your name and your contact details on, until you've got to the point where you know what you're doing. But remember that there are costs in business, and that these kinds of things should be costed into your startup costs. They don't have to cost thousands, but I think you are looking at a couple of hundred, you know, to really get the thing looking good, get some business cards together, you know, get some good images created. Just cost that into what you're doing. Don't hide the cost, and recognise that the more you use this thing, the more you will be recognised yourself.
Yeah. And just that is completely true. And it is something that stung me a little bit, because I didn't quite figure. I knew there was going to be a cost surrounding sort of setting up a business, but actually making sure that you are looking great, looking professional. It does actually cost a couple of £100 at the very least. So if you can factor that in, that's great.
I think that one thing that I will say that all businesses need to recognise is the difference between cost and value. Things are actually going to cost you money. What you get for free sometimes is excellent, but it may not be the full answer to what you want. So you do have to factor in that there may well be a cost, but that cost may have a greater significant value to you and your business.
That's absolutely true. And on that, social media can be a great investment in your business. Just remember that it's not, although it is free at the point of use, it isn't an entirely free medium for you to use. And I mean, for me, my top tip for businesses about to use social media for the first time is just be as authentic as you can possibly be, because it's the number one advantage you have above the big boys. If you are able to showcase your personality on your Facebook page, on your Twitter, people love it. People respond to it. It's the best way for you to start growing your brand using social media. So we're coming up to sort of the end of this first digital digest. I really want to thank Kathy for joining me today and giving up some of her morning to talk through these big issues for small businesses with me. If you'd like to sort of be a guest and a future sort of digital digest, you can email me. My email address is sam@silvercompassdigital.com. And I hope that you'll be able to join us again for another episode in a couple of weeks' time. So again, thank you very much, Kathy, for joining me. And everyone have a great day. Cheers.
Thank you.